In the name of Amen the Supreme, the All-Powerful, the one and only true Lord, in Amen we trust, as the Republic of Mentellect. The real 144,000 is being gathered in this day and time, the Mentellians. Menzaka Aminun to all my Mentellian brothers and sisters out here, registered members of the Republic of Mentellect, and to all future Mentellians who have yet to find their way home to the Republic of Mentellect, which is Amen's community. I send greetings out to you, and I send peace out to you in our Mentellian language by saying to you, Menzaka Aminun. Good evening, I'm your host, the intellectual Nuben Menkares, and this is Mentellect Radio, and tonight we're going to be discussing topic, time lapses within the inner and outer dimensions of time frames. Just as you have space in the outer dimensions, or space beyond dimensions, is considered to be time. In space is time. What is time in space? Time in space is solar systems. Time in space represents solar systems. Why? Because time is measured by light, and the light is stored within these solar systems that comes from the brightness of these suns that send projection onto these dimensions, into these planets, into these time frames, into these time zones, into these dimensions. So as that brightness is being projected into light and then into darkness, which is the dark matter, the physical realm, there are time frames or time lapses between those projections. There are time lapses between those projections. Why is there time lapse between those projections? Because there is a buildup to each frame. Between each frame, each dimension, there is a buildup. What is the buildup? The buildup is the flash, or the space in which those who come in and project in and project out can move between. Those are time lapses. Those are time lapses between time frames. This is how the Amen being were able to project in between these time frames and project out of these time frames. The time lapse is like a ladder in and out of the time frames. I want you to listen to me. The time lapses are like ladders in and outside of the time frames, in and out of the dimensions. So because they're in and out of the dimension, you have ladders, right? Time lapses in and out of dimension, in and out of time. That represents the ladder in which you leave from. So as we have the ability to move back and forth in these time lapses, because again, if time was lined up without time lapses, then you could not escape time. You cannot escape or leave out of a time frame if it was all stacked on top of time. You see, there has to be a lapse. The lapse represents that which connects those time frames, the space in between. Just as space, outer space, notice they refer to outer space, right? They refer to outer space, right, as space in between broader times, because again, there are many different times within space. What do I mean by that? Times within space. Times within space, or within a time lapse or a breaker to those time frames, represents the space, or the time is the solar system. The solar systems within space are the time frames within space. Space has no time of its own. It only houses time frames, so that makes it a time lapse, right? It makes it a time lapse. Because if you don't have lapse between times, then you will not be able to differentiate one time frame from another. You will not be able to differentiate one dimension from another. That's why you have to have lapse. In your lifespan, it is called death. Your death is a lap. Your death is a lap. A space in time. A blank space in time. So that the regeneration of time can come forward in the next. Do I make myself clear on what a lapse is? A lapse is a break in space, a break in time. A lapse is a break in time. And the break in time is where we're able to leave time. Right? That is a lap in time. Time lapse. Right? You have to have breaks in time in order to space time out. In order to get more of a bigger projection in the next time frame, there has to be breaks in the light. What does that represent in our everyday life? That represents a time where you rest. Don't you need a time when you rest, when you shut down over your time frame, you shut down and you rejuvenate? That's a time lapse. You stop moving around in that time. You stop motion in that time. You'll lay down, you'll rest. That's a time stop. And you are lapsing or going into a state of lapse, the time lapse, because you're not moving in time. You stop moving in time, physically walking and moving in time. You take a lapse, but you're not really still. You take a lapse, but you're not still. And you're being regenerated for the next day when you're going to get up and start moving around again. Then you start moving in time again. That's how time lapse work. They work in between time frames, so that everything within those time frames could grow into the next frame. Do I make myself clear? And this is how we come in and out of these time frames. You see? This is how we come in and out of these time frames. This is how we ascend these time frames. This is why when you pass away, right, again, you go into that time lapse, right? You are being charged up to jump to another period and point in time. To make a jump to another period, point in time. Right? Because again, only those who are of that soul projection or that solar projection can make these time lapse. They can see the lapse in time. Those of the soul projection can see the time lapse. We can see the lapse in time. You know how you know you can see the lapse in time? You can see how slow people move between time frames. You could see between seconds. You see? That's why we move quickly. We tend to move fast because, again, we can see the time lapse. We say people are moving slow, but it's not that they're moving slow. We see their time lapse. We see the time in between which they start their motion until where they finish their motion because they move slow. They see the time lapse. That's why you say that person appears to be slow, but they're not slow. They're moving within their time frame. But their time lapse can become slower. You can see it because we are the fastest projections on the planet. We are the only projections on the planet. So everything that is a reflection has an even slower time lapse. We have a time lapse too, but our time lapse is even quicker. Ours is quicker than everyone who is a reflection here, meaning a creation on the sun. Their time lapse is slower in their motion. You see? So the lapse is how we speed forward. We regenerate quicker within those time lapse, right? Within those time lapse. Because, see, the projection is boring through those time lapse. So the projection of who we are, the solar projection, is boring through as brightness through those time lapse, right? And through those time lapse, projections are being set. You have impressions being made within those time frames. You have projections being made within those time frames because they're going through the time spaces, through the time lapse. And every time we go through the time lapse, we are making an impression in the time frame. Am I making myself clear? Let me know if I'm making myself clear. We are moving forward in that. We are moving forward in that. We represent that next projection of forward motion. We represent that next projection of forward motion. The lap, again, the time and the projection in which we move has to be separated by something. Has to be separated by something. Those time lapse is where we get to see everything. Everything in clarity comes to us in these time lapses. See, this is why the beast don't really want you to have peace in this society. He said because he knows that where there's peace, there's time to think. And the minute you take to think represents a time lapse. Because you're not, and when you stop and you're not in motion and you're taking time to think about something, when you allow yourself to figure things out, that's a time lapse right in real time. That becomes a time lapse within real time. See, everybody's not able to go into that time lapse within real time. They have to go within that flow of a current or spiritual current that everybody else is following behind. Right? They have to go and flow with that. They don't have time to think. That's why they're just trained to believe. They're just trained to obey and believe what they're told. They don't have time to think about that because, again, the ability to think is part of the time lapse. That's a part of the time lapse. And in between the time lapse and whatnot, you get to see how everybody else moves in time. You get to see how everybody else moves in motion within time. That's why you can determine, that's why we always the ones that quick to determine how slow everybody is. How slow they move, how slow they talk, how slow they take to do things and whatnot, because you have that lapse in time. You see, you have that lapse in time. And again, the lapse in time are what keeps time divided. Time must stay divided. Because if time fell into itself without those time lapse, then there would be utter chaos and confusion without those time lapse. That's like saying if there was only planets and solar systems and no space in between these planets and solar systems, because that's the only reason space exists. Space exists to be space in between solar systems and planets. That's why space exists, to be space in between those projections. Space is the ultimate time lapse. That's why they'll tell you in space there is no time, because it's a time lapse. It is meant to be a break in time. You see? Because again, if all of the planets in the solar system were together, it would be chaos and confusion. Nothing would work in development. There would be no order. There would be no order. There would just be all kinds of power going through the atmosphere. So you have to have time lapses or breaks within these atmospheres, between these atmospheres, between these solar systems and planets. You have to have breaks in between space. You have to have space because they need space to keep constantly projecting and regenerating. They need their own space to project and regenerate. They have to have their own space within space, their own place within space for that time lapse. Just like the dimensions are stacked, 13 dimensions and whatnot, they have to have time lapse. They have to have time lapse. So those who come through as a projection through those dimensions, they're going to go through time lapse. They have to go through the time lapse. The time lapse show themselves as stages of development when you grow. When you hit milestones, or you just hitting, each year they count in 12 months. The 12 months, and then they say you change ages. You go from one age to the next age. That's meant to be a time lapse. The space in between where you're supposed to be changing in age, that's meant to be a time lapse. Between that time where you are one age and another, between that time is the time lapse. You see, that is the time lapse. Because if time just continued without it being broken, without it being brokered or broken, meaning controlled, then it would be chaos and confusion. These lapses of time are necessary. You take lapses in time when you go on vacation. You attempt to. You take lapses in your time. You're breaking your time frames, or what you're used to doing within your time frames. See, this is where powerful projection comes in. This is where powerful thought comes in within these lapses. Within these time lapses is where powerful thought comes in, powerful transmission comes in. That's why you might, when you're sleeping, right, when you're not in motion, you're not moving, right, you stop moving within time. Once you stop, one part of your motion, notice you start to think more clearly when you're sitting down and you quiet into yourself. You think more clearly. Or when you're sleeping, because you stop moving in time. You stop walking in time. I mean, your body is still physically operating within as it is moving through this time frame, but it is not walking in motion. You're not in motion. So that is the time in which you go through that time lapse, where you are not moving within time, where you're not out and about or walking around your place and whatnot, moving in time. You see? Time moves around you when you are in a state of, when you are in that time lapse. Time moves around you. When you are asleep, that represents a time lapse. Time moves around you. You're not moving within time. Time is moving around you. So when you lay down, you become that break in time. That's like saying, what if everybody lived forever on this planet within the three-dimensional realm? What if everybody lived forever? People can't live forever within the three-dimensional realm because there is no ascension for those who were not projected into the three-dimensional realm. So all that energy would destroy everything in the three-dimensional realm. So people must die here. People must die in the three-dimensional realm to be either recycled into the three-dimensional realm as spiritual energy or move to the fourth dimension as projected, as solar energy. They have to move and whatnot, but they cannot stay within the same time frame. There has to be a break. There has to be a time lapse in their lives. Because again, if there was no time lapse for them to move out of time, then nothing can move into time. Do y'all follow what I'm saying? They have to have a time where they live and a time where they die. Those represent lapses. You see? That represents a lapse. It's like a conveyor belt. And when you see something fade out of sight within this belt, you know that it's going someplace else. You don't see it anymore, but you know it's going somewhere else. It's out of sight. It's out of motion. But it's part of a greater movement. And it had to go through that time lapse to become a part of the greater movement. You see? You couldn't have everybody living all in the third dimensional realm and whatnot, because again, we would have to ascend to the fourth. See, because the reason why the fourth dimension is the open door to eternal life is because, again, you can ascend to the fourth dimension in the higher dimensions once you hit the fourth dimension, because there's constant ascension until you ascend out of this atmosphere, totally 13 dimensions out. So there is continuous or eternal life after the fourth dimension. In the third dimension, people have to live and die. People have to live and die. Because, again, in the third dimension, if all energy is allowed to mount up without the release, without the release of a time lapse, then all energy here would implode on itself. All energies would implode on itself. Nothing could come in. All these energies have to be released through the time lapse. Again, the time lapse is an energy release. It is a release in energy and a release in time. Time has to be released into other dimensions. Time has to be released into other dimensions. You ever ask yourself, why is it that they have so many different times within time? What does that mean when they have so many different times in time? They give you all these different time frames for different societies that have started and societies that have ended. That's how they count time, through societies that come and go. And there will be so many different societies on Earth that come and go. Why is that? Why is that? Because, again, certain time frames or people who are of a certain time have to go out or fade into a time lapse in order to be regenerated. You see, in order to regenerate your thoughts, right? If you're thinking about something just so hard and whatnot, sometimes you give yourself a break from thinking about it, and then you start thinking about it later, because that is your mind shutting down that mental thought or that timeline of thought and whatnot, because you're putting too much energy and focus on it. And you have to shut it down to regenerate Go through that time lapse in order to regenerate or start back up again and thinking in a different time frame, in a different mode. You see? Like you ever get this thing where you say you thinking about something so much and whatnot till you like getting a headache and you burning your brain out. Then you go somewhere, stop thinking about it. You might go get some sleep or get some rest and you break that energy and whatnot. Then when you get up in the next hour or two, whatever, then you thinking clearer. Because what you did was you shut your brain down, right? You gave it a time lapse. You broke that power that was going through on the focus of that energy and that picture that you were trying to get, and you regenerated it, and then you brought it forward again. When you woke up, you started to think forward again. Things became clearer. That's a time lapse. That's a time lapse. The greatest mental explosions happen between time lapses. The greatest mental explosions happen between time lapses. You see? And it happens, especially with our people, when we are in a state of regeneration. Time lapses are taking place. Time frames are being ended. Certain time, people's time, on the planet, certain eras, I should say, not time frames, but certain eras of time are being ended, and next ones are starting. So when they end, in between the end and the beginning represents the lapse. That represents the lapse of something new coming in. You see? Like when I gave the analogy of how they count decades as milestones in time. Here on this society, count decades. Like you go the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. You know what I'm saying? They count in tens. And as you're transitioning into another 10 years, they know that another era is going to open up. And in fact, they bring out other eras of things and whatnot to open up within the society. You see? They bring out other things, like I said, within, like when they got from 1960 to 1969, on the eve probably in 1969, they was going to unleash everything they wanted to unleash into 1970, because that's the time where the time lapse takes place at the ninth part. The ninth part is where the time lapse is. You see, before you get to the 10, that's the time lapse. That's before you go into that state of transitioning into another time, where more and extended, extended images and more clarity comes within those future time frames, but there has to be a break in time. They can't just seamlessly and flawlessly go together. There has to be a break. And then you start to see these things. That's why you notice decades, everything from decade to decade changes on some level. Things from decade to decade change on some level. It's like they're doing something totally different in the next decade. You see? That's meant to be, again, a time lapse. Because, again, things are being geared up to be pushed into future time frames within this time lapse. The time lapse is almost like a capsule, right? Where all their ideas are stored up within this time frame and they're waiting to be unleashed into the atmosphere going forward. So what does that say? That says for us, and how does this work for us today? I notice as I take more time to myself and stop moving within time and lessen my emotions and lessen my motion and my interaction, I have more time for time lapses. I have more time for time lapses, right? Because again, you get things as you in motion, but when you are, not in motion, you have more time for things in the time lapse. More things start to become clear to you. More things start to become clear to you within that frame of the time lapse. You start to see things futuristically, and you may even get some things from the past that you didn't quite understand that then start to materialize to you. because that's another thing that generates images from the past that you have made, that you may have forgotten within this subconscious state. And remember, I said the subconscious state is the three-dimensional realm. The things that you've lost in subconscious state, you usually find as you're going forward. As you're moving forward in your life, the things that you were trying to understand, get a comprehension of, you start to understand as you start to move forward. You ever notice that? Like you find, it's like as you move further and further away from these things, as you're going forward in your life, you understand what happened yesteryear, whatever happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You start to get greater clarity about that. You notice that? You start to get greater clarity about what happened as you start moving forward in the future. You see? As you take that time to move yourself forward. As you take that time to think about things and whatnot and get to yourself, right? You start getting clearer images of the future. You start to get clearer images of certain things that happened in the past and why they had to happen the way they happened. You start to get clearer images, future images. See? This is where we headed going forward. This is where we headed within the time lapse. The time frame and the time zone. This is where everything accumulates for you within these time lapses. When I do class, I have, the times y'all come into class and I have y'all sit for 4 hours. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why I have you all come into class and sit for 4 hours. Because it is meant to be a time lapse. And in that time lapse of 4 hours is your chance to receive the transmission that I am sharing by way of Amen, to regenerate you all. You see, those are meant to be time lapses. Because notice, everything, when we in our room, and we in this room and whatnot, and I'm teaching you all, it seems like time stops. That's why people say, damn, the time went so fast. It was 4 hours already. Because time seems like it stopped, and it has stopped. Or it appears to have stopped and sped up more, because again, if you cannot determine time and how fast it's moving, then something was altered in time. There was a time lapse that was altered. Sometimes class will drag out, it will drag sometimes, and it'll speed up real fast. But I've never heard it drag, it'll always go quickly. You see? Because the transmission is speeding up, and it's speeding us up mentally in our way of thinking. This is what we accomplish within our time lapse when we take ourselves out of the time frame of motion. Because again, in those time frames of motion, we're not really moving, meaning we're not moving amongst the general populace. When you're not moving amongst the general populace, you're pretty much taking yourself out of the time frame. You've taken yourself out of that time frame in which they exist. You've moved into a time lapse on your own. Everybody goes into that time lapse, but a lot of times people can't stand to be within that time lapse. You see, they got to be moving all the time within the time frames. They have to be always moving within the time frames. And you have to stop your motion. Even when certain people, like they say, they might say, oh, I'll go to sleep, I get sleep and whatnot. Would that be a time lapse when you go to sleep? Certain people can't even get rest when they go to sleep. See? Certain people can't get that. And then most of their time is spent moving about, talking about nothing. And then when they go to sit down or sleep or whatever, they're thinking about nothing from based on what they did earlier that day. They ain't thinking about nothing. So it's not even really a genuine time lapse of time within the time frame in which they can regenerate. It's not even a genuine time lapse. It's not. They have not been given themselves time to regenerate within the time lapse. That's why you get these people who drop dead, they get tired, they die of exhaustion, heart attacks, things like that. Because again, it's people who have not given themselves time to lapse within the time lapse. They have not given themselves a lapsing time, a time to lapse. Break in time, stop moving within time with the populace of people. They haven't given themselves time to do that. They usually don't find things that are relaxing to them. They usually don't find things that can take themselves out of the flow of motion. Like you see these people who they love getting up, going to work every day, doing the same meaningless job. You got people who do that. They can't wait to get up every day and go to the same meaningless job, go around the same meaningless people, because these are the people who don't want to divorce themselves from time. They don't want to take time out within the time lapse to move forward and regenerate the next thought or receive the next thought. They don't want to do that because 9 times out of 10 there's nothing coming to move them forward within the time frame. There's nothing. They have to rely on an artificial signal from the beast to move them forward, which usually comes by way of his educational system, his school, his media, everything. He uses artificial signals to move you forward in life. Those forward motions in life are supposed to come by way of the time lapse in which you're supposed to receive a regeneration or a projection of message to move you forward. Thoughts within the time frame. Am I making myself clear? Thoughts within the time frame. So, I have an understanding of how it works and the regeneration of us. I have an understanding of how it works within the regeneration of us, because we are ultimately here to regenerate us. We are ultimately here to regenerate us. And in the regeneration of us, time lapses must be built. Time lapses must be built away from these humans and their lesser time frames. Time frames must be built for us, amongst us. That's what our community is. Our community represents a time frame as well. Because when we start moving on a different time, aside from these other people, we don't go the same places they go anymore. We're not amongst them anymore. So we're not moving on their time anymore. We're moving in another time frame because we allowed ourselves to have or establish a time lapse, a place where we can go to set our own time, our own motion. Because when you have community, you start to change your movement, don't you? When you start to have a community, you start to change where you go, where you hang out, the type of people you hang out with. So already, just by you being part of a community or something else, you're already changing your motions and your movement. So you are already altering your time frame in which you used to move by way of a time lapse. You had to stop and hear something that inspired you, something that got you to think. That represented the time lapse, something that keeps you moving on a different time frame away from everybody else within this time frame. Something that separates you from that time. Like, for example, you might have had a job where you work in 9 to 5, right? Then you create another career where you don't have to work 9 to 5 no more. You just took yourself out of that time frame of 9 to 5 of going to work and working with people and doing this, that, and the third. You took yourself out of that, so that was energy that was moved out of that time frame. You represent the energy that was moved out of that time frame because you went through a time lapse and where you altered your time. You changed your time. You changed it. You're no longer moving on the same type of time as the people who used to work with going 9 to 5. You're not working on that same time with them people no more. You're on another time. Again, that also, time lapses is also what separates successful people from unsuccessful people. And when I say really successful people, the ones who are going to make impressions in life, I'm talking about those people who have those moments in life, those time lapses. It could be a powerful time lapse in life for you to receive pictures for future reference, future visions of your life, ultimate visions of your life. Things that will change you and separate you from everybody. Those are time lapses in time. Things that break that time in which you are moving with everybody else. A moment in your life that breaks the time frame in which you are moving with everybody else, which ends up separating you from everybody else. Amen is giving us a time lapse. All of those who are of the chosen, they will receive that time lapse. It is meant for them to receive that time lapse, that lapse in time where they move away from everybody else and towards a greater time. Because when you go through that time lapse and then you re-enter time on a next time, on another level of time within this dimension, your time becomes greater than those people who are moving within the same time frame or moving within the same dimension as you. Because y'all start moving in different time frames now because they're separate time frames. You see, those are separate time frames. Again, you move separately from people within this dimension, right? And you know that people move in different time frames within this dimension. You start moving to the highest time frames, the quickest time frames in this dimension, right? Once you go through that time lapse, right? Once you allow yourself to they also refer to time lapse as a memory lapse. You ever heard of memory lapse? That's another way of saying a time lapse. Basically, a memory lapse is where you start forgetting things that you stop forgetting things, right? From your past, you start forgetting things. And then when they want you to remember it, you decide whether you want to remember it or not, or whether it's worth remembering. You see? You might store that within the subconscious, which I said is the three-dimensional realm, as you're moving to the fourth. You store that there. You keep that there. It is not necessary when you're moving into the fourth dimension because, again, you've had that time lapse, that lapse in time. You see? Then you're able to move past any time. You are able to move past any time. You know what a time lapse is like? A time lapse looks like a caterpillar going into a cocoon and coming out as a butterfly. You see, because when that caterpillar enters that cocoon, he's no longer moving within the time frame of these other insects on the planet within this dimension. They are entering a cocoon and they're going through their own time frame. Right? They're going through their own time frame of change. They're moving on a whole other time frame of change. You see? But they had to go through that. They had to definitely go through the time lapse. They had to go through that break in time. Because without that break in time, there's no change. Without that break in time, there's no change. If let's say you have a child, let's say your son, you like you say, he was 5'5" last summer. Now he's 6'4" this summer. Somewhere, as your son was sleeping, or the nights he was sleeping, he was going through the time lapse. He was breaking time of growth, or his growth time, with everybody else. Because he was no longer, he said he might have been the same height as everybody else at the point, but he had to go shut down sometime, and he had to start making that growth, because he didn't make that growth as he was moving with you all, because you would have noticed him growing right in front of you. He was growing as he slept. He was growing as he slept. That sleeping was like the time lapse, and within that time lapse, he was growing. And then when he re-entered the time frames with you, like I said, it just seemed like you didn't even see it happen. You're like, damn, when that happened? He just got big. I don't know. He just, all of a sudden, he's big. He woke up, he's big. You see? He had to go through that time lapse. We are all in Mentellect going through a time lapse. A lot of you don't know it, but we are going through a time lapse. You are going to start seeing future visions of yourself and where you're supposed to be going, who you're supposed to be with everything. You're going to start to see that. That represents the time lapse. Because the people that you might have looked at, when we were moving in time, regular time, you see them differently now that you went through the time lapse. You see them differently. They're looking at you like you still the same, and they still going from memory how you used to be. But you already done went through the time lapse already, and you already see them for what they are on the other side of that time lapse. You're seeing them, and they still trying to look at you and trying to remember you, and they're just saying, oh, it's something different about you. You see what I'm saying? They're saying, oh, it's something different about you. They're trying to remember. They're trying to remember or trying to identify with the past you. Oh, you changed. What happened to you? Oh, you changed. They cannot understand the new you, or what they call a new you, because you went through that time lapse for change, for extension, for evolution, for growth. Whatever you received in that transmission during that time of change is what grew you into who you would be in the next time frame. Within the next time frame, it grew you into who you would be in the next time frame. You follow? Am I making myself clear? Exactly, the regenerated you, but that has to take place within a time lapse. Because right in that time lapse is where your genetic, in that time lapse is the genetic coding for the next stage of your life. And that time lapse is the genetic coding for the next stage of your life. Because everybody has time, or they have, they have points. Like, well, it'd be like, okay, this person, and within this time lapse of me seeing this person every day, next thing I might see this person tomorrow, and they might, they might look a little older. Or I might see them the next time like they losing their hair. Or they looking like they doing this, or this happening. But again, it seemed like it happened gradually, right? It seemed like it happened gradually, but you might have been watching these people and you didn't even notice it. You didn't notice it because, again, it happened in the time lapse. You see? It happened in the time lapse. And in the time lapse, time stops. So you don't get to see the change it was going through. You don't get to see it. Because time stopped in the lapse. You didn't get to see this person regenerate. You didn't get to see this person change. You didn't get to see the extension of this person, so you don't recognize that person after that change is taking place. You trying to be, why are you changing? Why are you acting so different? Why are you changing? Because they were not meant to see you change. They were not meant to see you change. They take the change and they take it. You like take it in stride. Oh yeah, he was short last time. He just got big overnight. And then they just adapt or adjust themselves to the new you. They adapt and adjust themselves to the next you, the one who has changed or has grown 5 or 6 inches, or the one who has gotten a little older, or your skin got a little dark, or your hair fell out, whatever the hell happened. You adjust yourself to that new person, or that person who went through that time lapse. You adjust yourself to it. But there was a lapse, and you'd be like, well, where'd that come out? That came out of nowhere. I didn't even see that happen. But they integrate themselves back in time with you, and you just like, okay. You see? That was put there, and it was necessary for a reason, these lapses in time. They were put here for a reason, these lapses in time. We need to take advantage of that. Right now, we, as the bright race, we must take advantage of these lapses in time. Because these lapses in time, right? These lapses in time represent everything that you're seeing happening in the world today. This is really a lapse in time. This three-dimensional world, we're going through a lapse in time before we move into the fourth dimension. This three-dimensional thing has been nothing but a goddamn lapse in time. I mean, yeah, time has been moving, but we done moved into that lapse. We done moved into that lapse of time. And the beast knows that we moving into that dark age. In order for the brightness, you know how it gets, it's going to get very, very dark, meaning it's going to get crazy, it's going to get out of order before that bright energy is going to put everything back in order. Because that's meant to be the next stage. The bright order is meant to be the next stage going toward the fourth dimension. You see? You know what it's like? I'm going to give you another example. Like you might be in a train station, right? And you get on the people, you get on the train, right? And they go through the tunnel. In the tunnel, you go into darkness before you come into the next station. And new people get on, and they on another type of time as the people who was on the last stop who may get off or this stop or ride the next stop. So it's all these people on different times getting on this vehicle, on this vessel, this train, and going from different stop to stop to stop. But the stop times or going into the tunnel, right? Going into the tunnel and going to the next stop, that tunnel and that darkness represents the time lapse. Because you're not keeping the same time between the two stations. The time lapses between those two stations. I'm not saying time is not going, it lapses to that next station. That darkness represents the lapse in time. Because ask yourself, why don't they just keep all... Do you ever ask yourself this question? In train tunnels, why do they not just light all the tunnels? Why don't they just light all the tunnels in train tunnels? You ever wonder why they don't just light all the tunnels? Why do they go through darkness when they go through a tunnel? Why can't you just put lights all within the tunnel? Did anybody ever wonder that? Obviously, it would be a confusion of something within that tunnel. There would be a confusion of something because the tunnel has to mimic something. The tunnel has to mimic darkness. Darkness coming out of light. Stages of transition. Exactly. That's what it's meant to represent. In this three-dimensional world, you have to have light and dark. Light and dark works as a generation and regeneration process. You see, light and dark works as a generation and regeneration process. You see, exactly, just like birth. It's a regeneration process. Death is the time lapse. That person who was moving on the same time as everybody else, once they die, they're not moving on that time no more now, are they? They moved on to another time. They're not moving on that time no more. They're being transitioned on to another time. So they had to go through that lapse in time, meaning they had to die in order to be transitioned on to that next stage of life, that next regenerated stage of life. And that even, again, that represents the elect today, because the old us had to die in the three-dimensional realm. Our old nigger ways and our old black ways are dying, and we are being regenerated into the fourth dimension through this republic. This republic represents our train in through the darkness, through the tunnel, going into the fourth dimension. That's what the republic really represents. You see, we ride in this train, this covenant, this community into the fourth dimension. You see, we're moving through this thing as pure brightness now. We're gonna experience pure brightness because we'll be able to look into and have an understanding of the future events that will take place in this world that we must know as future leaders. That is a bright vision. That is a brighter or a solar vision that we will start to develop as we move through this time lapse. We're moving out of this time with the so-called black race, the Negroes, because I've noticed this. How many of y'all noticed this? It just seemed like when you hear these Negroes talk on YouTube and stuff like, don't you just feel like it just feel empty? Like they just seem like it just look like we on a damn train and we leaving the station with them behind. They just still talking the same stuff. Don't it just seem like that? Like the stuff they say don't even seem real. It's like we just leaving that behind. They still talking like that. It just seemed like unreal. Like we moving to something else. Y'all get that? And the more and more they talk, it just sound more and more just like empty. It's almost like the more and more we're getting further away from them, the niggas starting to sound like it's echo. It's like an echo. Like it's not even you can't even really hear it up close. It's just like a vibration of a people that you're moving further and further away from. That's how I feel about black people. That's how I feel about black people. It's like you on a boat or something. You leaving them behind, and you just leaving, and then you hear them talking. You don't even, like I said, you don't even take it seriously. It could be your family members, anything. They words just sound hollow, like empty, like echoes. Like somebody that's not even in front of you talking to you no more. They start to sound like they words sound like hollow, empty. You see, just empty. It's going to get more and more like that. See, that's the reality. When they talking about politics and black people and white people and race and all, it just seems more and more hollow and empty. You see, it seems more hollow and empty. And it's supposed to be like that for those who are going through the time lapse, the ultimate time lapse into the fourth dimension, because this is going to be the ultimate time lapse. That's what it really means when it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. That represents the darkness, man. The death represents the darkness. Things are dying as we go into our time lapse. Things are dying. These things are dying around us. You understand? We not dying. We starting to really live. These things around us and these people around us are starting to die. Their words are becoming empty. Everything just becomes, it's starting to become meaningless. Like all the life is going out of it. You can feel it. You understand? You can feel it. Because a new and greater extension is coming to the elect. So whatever we experienced in our past lives is starting to become more and more irrelevant. These people are becoming more and more irrelevant. These things we heard are becoming more and more irrelevant. You sitting around a bunch of irrelevant people, and you realize that as we are in that time lapse, going through these time frames. We're in that time lapse, getting away from these time frames, I should say. You see it more and more. So, we recognize and realize it for what it is. We recognize and realize it for what it is in the bigger picture. It's just a picture being extended, and it's being extended past certain people who don't fit in the frame. It's being extended past certain people that do not fit within the extended frame. Simple as that. Simple as that. We can always bring certain people who made an impression, at least in our life, if not in the world, at least in our life. We can always bring those people forward. Right? The people that made an impression in our lives. And that even is going to be based on judgment. Once we go through this great time lapse and enter into a greater time frame, an more extended time frame within the fourth dimension. This is where we are going. And there will be no return. This is truly what they mean from here to eternity. From here to third dimension to eternity, meaning the fourth dimension, all open dimensions after we go through this time lapse. After we shut down and open ourselves to receive this extended picture. I've been doing this. Been doing this a lot lately. Especially in this time of my 49th year. I'm 49 years young today. 49. People asking me how I feel. So I ain't feel no different when I was 48, 47, 45, 46. It don't make no difference to me. Still feel the same. Actually, I feel better. Strange, but I really feel greater. I feel better. We'll be right back. The same way we see seconds, firsts, minutes, in time is the same way the Amen beings see solar systems. Solar systems to them in different dimensions are no different than seconds, firsts, minutes, and all that, in whatever time we measure. That's how they see our solar systems. They see them as times, or times of frame, or time reference points. They're time reference points, like ticks on like time frames, or we see minutes, seconds, whatever. That's the same way they see our planets or these solar systems. They're nothing but time frames, projected time frames. That's it. And the spaces, they drop them in spaces so that they would not feed on each other's time. They would not run into each other's time. You see? Because they have to operate within this space, but they have to operate collectively together, but within their own space. They have to operate collectively, but within their own space, within their own time frame, which is given to them by space. Space is what the Amen beings made time frames to go into. We all have our space in which we develop and grow. We are supposed to have our own space, our own place in development to grow. And that space, for us, as I said, represents the fourth dimension. But it's a long forward leap going into the space where we belong, home. It's a long forward leap forward. It's a forward leap. But we're heading in that direction with each regeneration of birth, that we breed amongst each other, with each regeneration of birth, that puts us closer to home, that puts us closer to the fourth dimension. with each regeneration of birth. That's why we have to make sure we are breathing on the highest tone and highest frequency. We must make sure we are breathing on the highest tone and frequency within this time lapse, because sex is meant to be a time lapse. All these things where we stop moving vertically, all of these things where we stop moving vertically becomes a time lapse. When you are no longer in vertical motion, meaning upright walking, then you go into a time lapse when you lay down. You're in a different time the way you're laying down, within your time frame. You see, you're not moving in motion vertically with everybody else. So when you stop to do things, rest, sleep, have sex, whatever you do, you stop to lay down, right? Horizontal. That's a time lapse. That's a time lapse. Because what you would have normally been doing within that time frame to get from point A to point B has been elapsed. It has been elapsed. You have collapsed that time in which you were going to get from point A to point B. You have stopped moving vertical and you started doing things horizontally, sleeping, sex, whatever it is, off your feet. And that is meant to regenerate. Because sexual intercourse was meant to regenerate what? Life. Sleeping was meant to regenerate what? Yourself. For the next time frames, for the next moments. That's why you have to be very careful in that time of time lapse within that horizontal position. You have to be very careful. What happens when you are in a time lapse in that horizontal position, when you are sleeping? What happens? Dreams, nightmares, visions, all these things come to you. Demonic entities, all these things come to you within a time lapse. So you have to be very careful, because that's a vulnerable moment of your growth within that time of sleep, rest, whatever, sex, whatever. It's a vulnerable moment for you. It's a vulnerable time for you, because that's the time when you're supposed to be changing and evolving after that. You're supposed to be changing and evolving after that. If you don't see any change or evolution after that, then there's something wrong in the time lapse in which you are laying down horizontal, sleeping, sexual, anything. Something wrong there. The energy's off. The energy is off. You see? That's the key thing with all of that, the horizontal activity. That's key with all that, who you are exchanging or how the exchange is or what you are doing when you're in that time by yourself. The rest you get, the sleep you get, the sex you get, all these things are meant to trigger or channel you going forward into the future, where you get up in the morning early or whatever. You get up and you're going forward in life and whatnot, and your vision is clear and whatnot. You don't have any of these back thoughts and things like that. Your mind is powering forward. You see, based on what you did in that time lapse, that moment of rest, based on how you rested. You see, that was your regeneration period. That was your regeneration period. If you do not have proper regeneration, then there is no forward motion. You see? Like I said, most of these people find it hard to regenerate sexually and regenerate after the physical rest of sleep. They find it hard because of what they put in their bodies, what they have around them. See, a lot of this food and things like this, another thing, a lot of this food that the beast gives you to put into your body, you can't readily digest. It takes your system a long time to break down, especially these artificial foods and all that fake soy, that fake meat and all that stuff, which the beast claims don't really, breaks down in your stomach better than eating meat. Let me tell you something. That is a foreign object. That's a foreign food entity through that soy, and it's going to take longer to break down in your system because your body doesn't recognize that. So you can be asleep and your body can still be breaking down food at night. Your body, food could be sitting in your body when your body is meant to be at rest, and your body's breaking down that food. You never really get good sleep because your body's still breaking down food it should have broke down hours ago. See, they put things out for you to eat where your body can never be totally at rest. Your body has to work overtime to digest that food. So then you can never go through the proper time lapse you need where your system is totally shut down for you to regenerate. They do that purposely. You see, that's why you be sitting a lot of times, you be getting up, going to the bathroom at night and whatnot. You have indigestion, all this stuff. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to sleep straight through. You see, that's because you can't process what's going into your body. You can't process it, right? And your body starts to shut down around it, and it takes time. And again, this is why you get up and you're not well rested, because again, you still tired and you getting up, whatever, because your body has not processed what you put in it the night before. Your thoughts have not been processed from the point in which you went to sleep, because you might have went to bed with something on your mind. You might have went to bed with something that was unresolved that's on your mind. You're not going to get no good sleep now, are you? You're not going to get any good sleep because of that unresolved issue. You see, you're not supposed to have any activity going on while in a time of rest, sex, whatever you're doing to regenerate. You're not supposed to have any activity going on at that time. So if they do things to have that where it's going on with you and whatnot, again, that's done on purpose. Because the greatest things, like I said, if you notice with a lot of these people who are wealthy, the elites and things like that, they sleep good at night. They sleep comfortable at night. They don't have any worries. They make sure they don't have any worries. They put a lot of people in positions so that they have to worry less. So they don't have to have a lot of things on their mind. They put a lot of people in charge because they like to sleep at night. They like to eat well. They like to eat, stay. This is why they live long. These the elites. You see them, they be 80, 90 years old and whatnot. And like I said, they ain't all fat and heavy. They lean and whatnot. Like they get good rest. They not stressed out about nothing. You see, they don't have no worries. That's why they're able to run the world effectively, right? Whether you like it or not, it is pretty effective. Certain things need to be altered, but it's pretty effective because they rest well. You see, on their level, they rest well. They regenerate on their level. You see, they don't have all these hang-ups and issues and thinking about things. They don't move like that. And that's how we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to have all these issues and these things on our mind that keep us from going into our time lapse. We're not supposed to have these things on our mind. These regrets, these guilts. We're supposed to move forward by power, by the thought by the future thought, the next thought. We're supposed to move by the next thought, by the future thought. We're not supposed to be caught in the time, in the moment of what we're doing at that point. We're not even supposed to be in the time, in the moment of what we're doing at that point. We're supposed to be doing it when we sleeping, when we doing everything, having sex, whatever. We're supposed to be seeing that futuristically. We're not supposed to just be in that moment. We're supposed to be in that moment futuristically, if you follow what I'm saying. You see? There's a difference. You know the difference when you sleep and you sleep for future comfort, rest and whatnot. So when you wake up, you well rested versus you trying to sleep within that time frame. When you try to sleep within that time frame, when you try to have sex within that time frame and not out of that time frame for going forward, it's never going to be satisfying or good. You see? If that makes sense. Please explain. Please ask me if I'm making sense on what I'm saying. When you do things in future thought, is that clear? When you do things in future thought, you see, I'm gonna give you a good example of that in the sex talk. The sex part of it is good going through it, but you really doing it for the end result, which is the climax. Is that not right? The sex part is good, but ultimately you're doing it for the end part. You're not really. That's nice, all of the things that lead up to it, the kissing and the hugging and the actual physical part, but you're ultimately doing it for the climax. You see? You ultimately going to sleep because you want to wake up well rested. You see what I'm saying? That's it. You're supposed to do things with future outcomes in mind. That's how the time lapse works. It's more effective that way. You see? Because you realize you're trying to get to something. You're trying to arrive at something. You see? That would be the point of that. Without that, without that focus into the future, it's no sense in even coming out of the time lapse. You see? You ever notice when somebody goes into a coma, the reason why they go into a coma like that, they stay in a coma, is because they don't have any reception or any vision into the future. After they come out the coma, they stuck in that moment of the coma. This is why they'll try to shock the person back into consciousness. They'll try to throw some kind of shocks. They'll keep them hooked up to the machine and monitoring their vitals and whatnot, and try to, even give little shocks to try to bring them forward, you see, because they stuck in that state. In other words, their body has to resonate with something going forward to bring them out of the state. Something has to pull you out of the state you in. So again, if you go into that time lapse and there's nothing to pull you through the time lapse, you will stay in the time lapse. You see, you will stay in the time lapse. You'll stay in that moment. You won't have anything to pull you through that moment. It's just meant to pull you from moment to moment to moment. From time frame to time frame to time frame, from dimension to dimension to dimension. That's what the time lapse is for. That's all. It's nothing else other than that. They give you the space to regenerate. They give you the space to regenerate outside of time. Outside of time, to give you the space to regenerate, where you're not moving in time vertically. To give you the space to regenerate, where you are regenerating horizontally. You see? That's why that is. That's why that is. We are working on that. You see? We're going to work on that as we're going forward in the future. We're going to work on it as we're going forward in the future in the name of Amen. By the power of Amen. We're going to work on that. Because that is necessary. Okay? That's necessary. The lapse in time is necessary. Like I said, when you might have a getaway and whatnot, you might be, tired of being around your friends, family. You might want to get away and go on vacation, and you want to get on another time. You see, you want to get on another time frame, another time zone. You don't want to do what you was doing when you was dead. You want to go someplace else and relax and chill out for a week or 2 weeks or on a beach somewhere, whatever. You want to get out of that time you in and on a different time frame. You see, these are all forms and lapses of time. These are all forms and lapses of time. When we have an understanding of how it works, then we'll basically be able to control our time a lot better and ultimately control time altogether. That's what we're coming to. And that's all doable by the fourth dimension. That is all doable by the fourth dimension. And this is where we have to go as the elect. We'll be right back. It's my birthday today. I got 14, 15 more minutes left to my birthday. I'm 49 years old today. 4 and 9 equals 13. Right. I'm expecting to see some eventful things this year, and especially on my 50th birthday, which people will be quite a outstanding feat for somebody who made it. I'm just having thoughts. Somebody who made it this long and whatnot, and seen a lot of stuff. I thank you all, those of you who gave me well wishes today on my 49th birthday. Right? I say we're not getting older, we're getting wiser. Don't never look at it as getting older. See, white people and all these rest of these humans, they get older. We're supposed to mature and get wiser. Right? And again, part of the wisdom is knowing when to take those laps in life, those time lapses in life, those moments where you are looking to receive a greater clarity. You see, a lot of our people don't have those bright moments because, again, the bright moments come in that time. The bright moments come in that time. You see, and those times of the time lapse, that's when the bright moments come, because that's when you receive the transmission for the change, right then and there. You know, right then and there is where the time lapse takes place, right? Where your growth takes place. I'm learning to cherish my quiet time more and more, and my alone time more and more. I'm learning to cherish that. And I don't understand how people don't like their alone time and their quiet time. I don't know. You got certain people who have a problem with being alone. I don't get that. I don't get that at all. That's the most peaceful state, to be alone, but not lonely. Knowing that you could reach out to people, of course, you could reach out to family, to Famazi, you could reach out anytime, but to be able to be alone and be in peace. You understand? Be alone and be in peace and receive that peace of mind. That is the ultimate time lapse and the growth and the space we need of our people. Very peaceful, exactly. I'm the same. I like to be by myself. I do. A lot of times I like to be by myself. I like people in doses. People in doses. I like to deal with people in doses. I don't like people around me all the time. You know. And that's the mass majority of the time. I don't like people all in my face and all around me all the time. That's just me. And I like when people are around. You know, you like people in doses. That's just how it is. Sometimes you have to take people in doses, and you have to know when to shut it down, because, again, you need those moments of time, because, again, you don't want to tie into everybody's time. Because a lot of people got things going on in their time frames. We all got different things going on in our time frame. And when we come together and learn to work in unison with our time, that's excellent. But we also need time lapses in between. We need time lapses in between. You know how they used to say, in the meantime, between time. Remember how they used to say, in the meantime, between time? That was basically people saying that in a way, but they didn't even know what they were saying. In the meantime, between time, that's supposed to be the time lapse. When we step out of time. You see? I say take time off your job. Well, don't they say when you on vacation, you go take some time off? Now, why would they say that? Isn't that strange? Why would they say take time off? You see? Why would they say take some time off your job? Right? Because they know that you moving on a timeline that they set for you. You're moving like everybody else within that timeline. And eventually that timeline becomes tiring, and you want to get off of that timeline. You want to get off of that assembly line, that timeline. You want to get off of it. You need that time lapse, that space in time. You need that space to regenerate. Exactly. Exactly. Reinvigorate yourself and reinvent yourself. You need that. You see? That's why the Beast gives people vacations and stuff like that, because he knows everybody needs that at certain points in their life. They need that time lapse. You got people who will burn themselves out working and constantly moving in that time. They're working 7 days a week and whatnot, however hours, 50 hours a week, barely sleeping and whatnot. These people end up dying young. They work themselves to death. You see, you got to force these people to go on vacations. You see, and what they don't understand is they're never going to be as effective as if they would have took those breaks. They're not going to be as effective. They will never be as effective as if they took those breaks. Again, those are things that you need. You need those breaks in time to extend yourself. You must have those breaks in time to extend yourself, to raise yourself to the next level. You must have that. You see, but the problem is, like you'll have black people or people in general, the mass majority of people, they'll take those time lapses, those time breaks, and they never find, and you never notice where they like take time off their jobs. They take time off their jobs and all this, and they never come up with nothing better than just to go back to their job. Don't you know when you on vacation, you're supposed to be, in the times you on vacation, you're supposed to be figuring out ways to change your job or change to something else where you become independently making money. That's really what your time off is supposed to be spent doing. starting a business or doing something where you can make money and get something up and going. That's really what your time off is supposed to be, to get onto another time frame, to get onto another timeline, to set your own timeline. That's what that's supposed to be for. You ain't supposed to go back to the same thing. You see? But most people just go back like ain't nothing happened because there is no future vision of them. They're going to keep riding on that timeline, and they're going to keep needing breaks. They're going to keep needing to break down and whatnot and take their breaks when somebody else tells them to take their breaks, or take their time lapse when somebody else tell them to take their time. You see? They're going to keep doing that. So again, like I said, as we are in discovery of this time lapse and what it means to us and the regeneration of our power, right, going forward, we look to be able to be those powers who master, you see, because I said the powerful people master, or powerful ones master time, and the slaves are mastered by time. Slaves are mastered by time, and the powerful ones master time. Masters master time. Slaves are mastered by time. You see? Exactly. They become accustomed to the routine because somebody set the routine for them. And when somebody sets the routine for you, they set your time frame for you. They set the time in which you move and operate. So now they control you. They control your emotions. They control your emotions. And you can't move on the time that you want to move on. You see? So this is the whole point of that. You give your time, and sometimes you don't give your time wisely. You don't give your time wisely. And the reason why you don't give your time wisely is because you're not looking forward in time. You have to look forward in time to give your time wisely. To make your time resonate, to make your time mean something, to make your time have an impression and whatnot. Your time here on earth is supposed to be spent making impressions in life, and you cannot make impressions in life when you are moving on the timelines of all these other people. Notice the people who have become independent business people and things like that, are people great in life. They always moved on their own timeline. They wasn't doing that punching clocks and going and working and whatnot. Like I said, you do that until you could do something else. You're not supposed to be moving on nobody else's time. You do that until you can do something else. Something where you can come up with, where you'll be able to make money and things like that. Now, certain people are not cut out to be business people. See, some people are meant to move within time. You see? Some people are just energy and not power. Some people are just energy and not power. See, we're going to produce power in this community. We're going to produce power in this community. When all energy is put together and whatnot, it becomes power in one covenant. That's what the whole point of this is, because we were all at one point energy in our life, and then Amen forcing us into this state of power through what we do in this time lapse, through that moment of clarity and that moment of reality. We are being forced into a different time frame, a different state. A different way of life. Right? We're being forced into a different way of time, a different way of converting time, a different way of walking in time. We are being converted into that. That's what we're being converted into. And that's not going to stop. That's not going to stop the extension of time. People, place, and possession, they don't matter as you're moving through time. It will become less and less important as you're moving through time. It will become less and less important as you're moving through time. So let me go ahead and read these questions before we get out of here. What are time lapses within the inner and outer dimensions of time frames? They are time stops or time rest, places where you rest from time. Because I don't care wherever you're moving through time, you're going to have a break in time or a time lapse for you to regenerate and move to the next time frame. See? You're going to need that. The time lapse is usually done in states of horizontal position, whether you are dead, whether you are sleeping, whether you are having sexual intercourse, when you're off your feet, right? You tend to start thinking because you're not moving in time as far as vertical is. You are horizontal, or you're sitting down, your legs are, you're not moving. Your legs, you're not walking. And it takes time to do that. So just by you not doing that, you're taking away from that time. Why are there time lapses? Because you have to regenerate in these time lapses. You need to regenerate. If there was no time lapses, there would be no regeneration. You need space to regenerate. Space is the lap. Just like outer space is the time lapse for solar systems. What are they there for, the time lapse? To absorb and regenerate projection into you. To absorb that. For you to absorb that. Okay. Is space like lapses in time? Like the planets? Yeah, it is. I said space is like the lapses in time, and the planets are the solar systems between that. They represent time. The solar systems and the planets represent time within space. That's why I said time within space is the planets, the solar system. We have to get into a space ourselves, into a zone ourselves, where there is no time, at least no time in vertical motion. And that's it. Join me tomorrow night for the next Mentellect Radio broadcast. I want to thank you all for those of you who wish me a happy birthday. I thank you all for the well wishes. 49 years young today, old today, whatever you want to call it. I've been on this planet 49, years, so they say. And I'm feeling great, actually. I am the intellectual. Well, we're going to close out in the name of Amen, by the power of Amen. In Amen we trust, in Amen we think, and in Amen we continue forward forever. Hail Amen, hail the Mentellians. I am the intellectual Nuben Menkares. This has been Intellect Radio. See y'all tomorrow night. Good night.
Rising out the black race to the bright race, out the black race to the bright race. It's the Republic of Mentellect. Black race to the bright race. If it's hell, then it's hell us. They tried everything just to spell us. Fed us religion, gave us fake gods. Through all of that, we beat the odds. Now we coming together under one flag. Colors red, gold, and blue. Superman, Superwoman, that's me and you. The infinite capabilities that we